Ethan had always considered himself a strong, capable soldier. His mission was simple: explore unknown planets, gather data, and return home. Nothing special, nothing unusual. But that all changed when he landed on the strange planet of Ark. It was a world filled with thick forests and vast mountains that seemed to touch the sky. The air was thick, and the ground was soft beneath his boots. His team had been sent to map the planet and report back. They'd done it hundreds of times before, so Ethan wasn't worried. But the moment they entered the dense forest, everything shifted. Ethan's team had been moving through the trees for hours, and everything seemed quiet, almost too quiet. It was then that he saw her. She appeared out of nowhere, like the forest itself had made her. She was tall, with long dark hair that flowed like a river behind her. Her eyes glowed a bright, almost unnatural shade of blue, and in her hands she held a staff that seemed to shimmer with power. Ethan stepped forward, trying to make sense of the situation. He knew that the people of Arkale were known for their ancient magic, but he hadn't expected to meet one in person. She was like nothing he had ever seen. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice steady, though his heart raced. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked him over, sizing him up, her eyes cold and calculating. Finally, she spoke in a voice that sounded like wind whispering through the trees. "I am Lyra, protector of this land, and you are trespassing." Ethan frowned, confused. "We're just here to explore. We didn't mean any harm." Lyra's expression remained unchanged, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of anger, perhaps. She seemed to study Ethan for a long moment before raising her staff. Ethan's team tensed, unsure of what to do. "You think you can just come to my world without consequences?" Lyra's voice was low, almost a growl. "You humans are all the same, invading, destroying, never understanding the damage you cause. You will not leave this place without learning that." Ethan didn't understand. He had met many alien species in his career, but none had shown such hostility. He took a step forward, trying to keep the situation calm. "I don't want any trouble. We'll leave as soon as we gather the data we need." But Lyra wasn't listening. With a sudden, sharp movement, she slammed her staff against the ground. Ethan felt the air around him shift, a strange energy vibrating in the air. Before he could react, a flash of light filled his vision. The world around him seemed to freeze. When he blinked, everything was normal again, or so he thought. A sharp pain, like a burning cold, coursed through his chest. He gasped and stumbled backward, clutching his side. What did you do?" he asked, his voice weak. Lyra stood there, her staff lowered, but her eyes were fierce. "You have 7 days. In 7 days you will die." Ethan could barely speak. What do you mean?" "Curse," Lyra answered coldly. "Curse for your kind. You will suffer as you made others suffer. You will not survive here." Ethan's mind raced. A curse? He wasn't sure if she was serious or if it was some kind of strange threat. He had encountered alien technology before, but magic? It seemed ridiculous. Lyra's gaze softened for a brief second, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. 7 days. That's all you have, and when your time is up, you will be no more. With that, she turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Ethan standing there in shock. The curse was real. Ethan staggered back to his team. But the pain in his chest was growing sharper. His vision blurred. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath. His comrades rushed to him, but they were just as confused and frightened as he was. "What happened?" one of them asked, their voice filled with panic. Ethan struggled to speak. She cursed me." The team didn't know how to respond. They had no answers. And in that moment, Ethan realized that his life had changed forever. They returned to their ship, and as Ethan collapsed into his bunk, the full weight of what had just happened began to sink in. He had been cursed to die in 7 days, 7 days to live, 7 days to figure out how to survive. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. But as the pain began to subside, a new thought took root in Ethan's mind. If he was going to survive, he would need to find Lyra. He would need to understand why she cursed him. And if there was any way to undo it, the following days were a blur. The planet's dense forests and alien creatures became a maze, but Ethan knew he had no choice but to press on. With each passing hour, the pain would return, and the countdown continued. He had 6 days left now. There was only one person who could end this, Lyra. And somehow, Ethan was going to find her. Ethan's heart raced as he paced around the ship, his mind racing with thoughts of the curse. 7 days. He had less than a week to live, unless he could find a way to break the curse. The pain in his chest had started to fade, but he knew it was only temporary. Couldn't afford to waste any time. His team, still in shock from what had happened, tried to offer him comfort, but there was nothing they could do. They weren't experts in magic, and they didn't know how to deal with an alien curse. They could only watch as their friend and comrade slowly faded away. I need to find her, Ethan muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. I need to find Lyra. He didn't fully understand why, but something in him knew that Lyra held the key to his survival. Maybe she would lift the curse if he could prove to her that he wasn't like the humans she had hated. Maybe there was more to the curse than just revenge. Maybe she was just as lost as he was. With no clear plan, Ethan decided to leave the ship. He couldn't sit around and wait for death to come knocking at his door. He grabbed his pack loaded it with essentials and set out alone. The forest was dense and filled with strange sounds, but Ethan pushed forward. He had no idea where to find Lyra, but he knew one thing: he had to try. As the hours passed, the landscape began to change. Trees grew taller and the air became heavier. The ground beneath him was soft and wet, making each step feel like a struggle. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. The world around him seemed alive, watching his every move. Ethan had never felt so alone. He wasn't sure how long he had been walking, but the pain in his chest began to return, sharp and unbearable. He stopped, clutching his side as the world spun around him. The curse was starting to take its toll. Please, Ethan whispered, looking up at the sky, as if asking the stars for an answer. I need help. But no help came. Just as he was about to collapse, a figure emerged from the shadows of the trees. It was Lyra. She stood there, watching him with those piercing blue eyes, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan was too weak to say anything, and Lyra simply watched him as if studying his every move. Why? Are you here? Lyra finally asked, her voice soft but filled with a quiet power. I'm here because you cursed me, Ethan said, forcing the words out. I don't know why, but I need you to lift it. I can't die like this. Lyra's gaze softened for a moment, but it quickly returned to its cold, calculating intensity. Why should I lift the curse? She asked. Why should I spare you? Ethan's chest hurt as he struggled to breathe. He could feel his strength fading with every passing second. But he wasn't going to give up. Because I don't deserve to die, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I did to anger you, but I'm not like the humans you've known. I'm not a villain. I just want to live. Lyra remained silent for a long time. Ethan could see the conflict in her eyes, the anger and the pain that seemed to haunt her every thought. He realized then that the curse wasn't just about him. It wasn't even about humans. It was about her. She had been hurt, deeply hurt, and her anger had twisted into something far darker than anything Ethan had ever imagined. You humans think you can come to our worlds, take what you want, and leave without consequences, Lyra said, her voice filled with bitterness. You never understand the damage you cause. Ethan didn't know what to say. He couldn't deny that humans had made mistakes. But he wasn't like the others. He had seen the good in people, the kindness and compassion that existed even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. He wasn't here to take, he was here to help. I don't want to hurt anyone, he said softly. I just want to show you that not all humans are like the ones you've known, can change. Lyra studied him for a moment, her gaze intense. Ethan could feel her power, the weight of her presence pressing down on him. You're new. She was capable of so much more than just cursing him. But in that moment he also saw the pain in her eyes, the hurt that no one had ever bothered to understand, the curse. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about fear. Fear of what had happened to her. Fear of what humans had done to her world, her people, her heart. "You have 7 days," Lyra said suddenly, her voice softer now. "If you want to prove yourself, show me. Show me that you're different. Show me that you're not like the rest." Ethan's heart raced, his mind spinning. This was it, the chance he had been waiting for. "How?" he asked, his voice shaky. "You will face the trials," Lyra replied, her tone serious. "The trials of the heart and the mind. If you succeed, the curse will be lifted. But if you fail?" Her words hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Ethan had no choice. He had to succeed. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, grateful for the chance she was offering him. "I'll do whatever it takes." Lyra nodded, her eyes narrowing as she turned to leave. 7 days, human. 7 days to prove your worth. As she disappeared into the shadows of the forest, Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. He didn't know what the trials would be, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to give up. Not now. He had 7 days to win her heart. And he would do whatever it took to make it happen. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he made his way deeper into the dense forest. The air was thick with the scent of damp leaves, and the rustling of unseen creatures echoed in the distance. He had 6 days left now, 6 days to prove to Lyra that he wasn't like the humans she had hated. 6 days to change her mind. The trials she had spoken of loomed large in his thoughts. What would they be? How would he prove himself? But as much as he thought about it, he had no answers. He only knew that he had to try. The sky was beginning to darken as the sun set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Ethan's stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten in hours. He stopped to catch his breath, wiping the sweat from his brow. He had been walking for what felt like days, but the forest seemed to stretch on endlessly. Suddenly a rustle in the bushes caught his attention. His heart skipped a beat, and his hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side. Out. But before he could react, Lyra appeared from the shadows, her long hair flowing like a river behind her. Her piercing blue eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Ethan felt like he was being drawn into them. "Looking for me?" Lyra asked, her voice sharp but not unkind. Ethan exhaled slowly, relieved that she had found him before he had wandered too far off track. "I've been trying to find you," he said. "I need to understand the trials you mentioned." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You're eager. But be careful what you wish for." Ethan stood tall, trying to show confidence, despite the fear swirling in his chest. "I know I have to prove myself. I just need to know what to do." Lyra regarded him for a long moment, her gaze unreadable. The silence between them grew thick, and Ethan wondered if she would simply walk away, leaving him to figure things out alone. But then, to his surprise, she spoke. "You're human," she said, her voice quiet but filled with a strange mixture of contempt and curiosity. "And you're right, you have to prove yourself. But I don't think you even understand why I cursed you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "I don't understand why, but I'm trying to. I just ... I need to know what I can do to earn your trust." Lyra's eyes softened for a brief second, but the moment passed quickly. She turned away and began walking slowly toward a nearby clearing. "You want to know why I cursed you?" she asked over her shoulder. "Because your kind has done more harm to this galaxy than you realize. You take without asking, you destroy without care, and when you leave, nothing is left but ashes. I cursed you because you're just like the others." Ethan followed her, listening closely. "I know that humans have made mistakes. We've hurt people. We've hurt entire worlds. But not all of us are like that. Some of us want to change. Some of us want to help, not destroy." Lyra stopped suddenly, turning to face him. "And you think I should believe that? You think that I should forget the countless lives your kind has ruined just because you say you're different?" Ethan felt a tight knot form in his chest. "I can't change the past, Lyra. But I'm not here to defend humans. I'm here because I want to show you that not all of us are like the ones you've known. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Lyra's eyes flickered with something. Was it doubt? Or perhaps something deeper? But before she could respond, she turned away again, walking into the clearing and gesturing for him to follow. I don't care what you say, human, she said, her voice cold again. If you want to prove yourself, you'll have to face the trials. They will test you in ways you cannot imagine. Ethan stepped forward, determined. I'm ready. Lyra stopped and faced him, her expression unreadable. We'll see, she murmured. You're about to enter a world unlike anything you've known. The trials will test your strength, your mind, and your heart. If you fail, the curse will remain and you will die. Ethan nodded, his jaw clenched. He wasn't going to fail. Not now. Not when he had come this far. Lyra raised her staff, and a swirl of energy enveloped the clearing. The air seemed to pulse with power, and Ethan felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't pain, but a force that seemed to pull at him, urging him forward. The first trial is simple, Lyra said. You will face a creature that has no fear, no mercy. It is as much a part of this world as the trees in the sky. You must defeat it or you will fail. Before Ethan could react, the ground beneath him began to tremble. The trees around them shook, and a low growl echoed through the clearing. The air grew heavy with the scent of something wild and dangerous. Ethan's heart raced as he reached for his weapon, but then he saw it. A massive creature emerged from the shadows, a beast with glowing red eyes, sharp claws, and teeth like daggers. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen before. Its massive form towered over him, its muscles rippling as it prowled closer. Ethan's mind raced, but his body moved on instinct. He raised his weapon and fired, but the beast dodged the shot with a terrifying speed, lunged at him with a roar, its claws outstretched. Ethan barely managed to dive out of the way, his heart pounding. The creature was fast, powerful, and relentless. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes. As he faced the creature, Ethan realized that this wasn't just a test of strength. It was a test of will, of determination. He had to survive, not just for himself, but for Lyra, for the chance to prove that humans could be more than just destroyers. With a deep breath, Ethan prepared for the fight of his life. Ethan's heart was pounding in his chest as he faced the creature. The massive beast growled, its eyes glowing a fierce red as it stalked around him. His weapon was useless. The shots it fired seemed to bounce off the beast's tough hide. He couldn't afford to fail, not now. He took a deep breath, forcing his mind to focus. The beast lunged forward with terrifying speed. Ethan barely had time to react, dodging out of the way just in time. The ground shook as the creature crashed into the dirt. Where he had been standing moments before, the trial had begun. Ethan knew that Lyra was watching, waiting to see if he would survive. This wasn't just about defeating the creature. It was about proving himself, showing that he had the strength, the heart, and the determination to fight. It was about showing her that he wasn't like the humans she had known before. The beast circled him, its massive form blocking out the sunlight. Ethan quickly scanned the area for anything that might help him. A large rock nearby caught his eye. If he could get close enough, he might be able to use it to his advantage. With no other choice, he sprinted toward the rock, the creature hot on his heels. As he reached it, the beast lunged again, its claws outstretched. Ethan dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. The creature's claws scraped across the rock, leaving deep grooves in the stone. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed a sharp piece of the broken rock and turned to face the beast. The creature roared, its red eyes fixed on him as it prepared. For another attack, Ethan's breath was shallow as he gripped the rock shard tightly in his hand. Couldn't afford to be slow or weak. If he failed, the curse would remain and he would die. The beast charged again, but this time, Ethan was ready. He sidestepped its massive swipe and drove the shard into the creature's side. The beast howled in pain, but it didn't stop. Instead, it swiped at him with its claws, catching Ethan in the shoulder and throwing him to the ground. Ethan groaned in pain, his head spinning. He could feel the blood dripping from his wound, but he didn't have time to feel sorry for himself. If he didn't act now, he would never get another chance. With all the strength he could muster, Ethan pushed himself to his feet. The creature was charging at him again, its massive form rushing toward him like a freight train. Ethan had only one chance left. He waited until the last possible second, then darted to the side, narrowly avoiding the beast's claws. The creature's momentum carried it forward, and it crashed into a tree with a deafening roar. Ethan seized the opportunity. He ran forward, using the rock shard to strike at the creature's weak spot. The beast let out a final, ear-piercing scream before it collapsed to the ground. Defeated, panting heavily, Ethan stood over the creature, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. The trial was over. But it wasn't just the physical victory that mattered. It was the determination, the willingness to keep fighting, even when things seemed impossible. He had proven something, not just to the creature, but to himself. And he hoped to Lyra. He turned to face her, his body aching and bloodied from the fight. She stood at the edge of the clearing, watching him silently. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel both vulnerable and seen. "Well?" Ethan asked, his voice raspy from the fight. Lyra didn't immediately respond. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning his bloodied form. For a moment, Ethan thought she might say something harsh, but instead she nodded slowly. "You passed the first trial," she said, "but there are still more to come." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had expected to feel relief, but instead, the weight of the trials ahead pressed down on him even harder. He wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, trying to steady his breath. What's next? Lyra's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Next, you'll face the trial of the mind. You'll test your will, your logic, and your understanding. Only those who can think clearly under pressure will succeed." Atha nodded, already feeling the weight of the next challenge bearing down on him. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting to change the way Lyra saw humans. He had to prove that he wasn't just a soldier or a representative of his species. He was Ethan, and he wasn't going to fail. With a final glance at Lyra, he turned and began to make his way toward the next trial. His body ached, his wounds burned, but he kept moving forward. He couldn't stop. Not now. As they walked, Lyra didn't speak again. Ethan wasn't sure if she was still judging him. She still saw him as just another human who would fail, or if she had begun to see him differently. Either way, he wasn't about to give up. The trials had only just begun, and he was going to do whatever it took to pass them. Ethan knew the curse would not be easy to break. But for the first time in his life, he felt as if he was truly fighting for something important, something worth fighting for. And maybe, just maybe, he was fighting for her too. Ethan's body ached. The fight with the creature had taken its toll, but the real pain was in his heart. He had won the first trial, but there were more to come. Each challenge seemed harder than the last, but he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when he had come this far. Lyra walked beside him, her steps graceful and silent. She hadn't said much since the battle. Her eyes were unreadable, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching him closely, judging every move he made. After the first trial, she had led him to a secluded part of the forest. It was a place that seemed to hum with energy, the air thick with magic. Ethan had never felt anything like it before. The trees were taller here, their trunks twisted and gnarled, as if they had been growing for centuries. The ground beneath his feet was soft, covered with a thick carpet of moss. He hadn't asked about the second trial yet. He wasn't sure if he was ready. After the physical fight with the beast, he had expected something equally intense, but the silence between them made him anxious. Lyra finally broke the silence as they approached a clearing. She didn't look at him as she spoke. "You've passed the first trial," she said, her voice calm but distant. "Be different." Ethan looked at her, his chest tightening. "What do I need to do?" "You need to face your fear," Lyra said. The trial of the mind is not just about your strength. It's about your ability to see things clearly when the world around you is dark. You will be tested, Ethan. You must face your worst fears, and only then will you know if you are truly worthy. Fear. The word alone sent a shiver down his spine. He had faced danger before. He had been in countless battles, staring death in the face more times than he could count. But fear? Real fear? He wasn't sure he was ready for that. "I'm ready," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the rising doubt in his chest. Lyra nodded, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes that he couldn't quite place. "We'll see?" They entered the clearing, and as soon as they stepped inside, the air seemed to change. It grew colder, the temperature dropping until Ethan's breath became visible in the air. The trees around them twisted, their branches reaching out like dark hands. The sky above them darkened, the clouds swirling ominously. "Focus, Lyra," instructed. "Close your eyes. Let the fear come to you."
"I'll be.
"Well, then will you be able to overcome it?"
I'll be."
Ethan hesitated, but then he did as she said. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The moment he did, the world around him seemed to shift. He could feel the presence of something watching him, waiting. He didn't know what it was, but he could feel it deep in his bones. Suddenly, the fear hit him like a wave. It was unlike anything he had ever felt before. It wasn't just fear of death or failure. It was the fear of being completely alone, of having no one to turn to, no one who cared. The fear of losing everything, his friends, his family, his purpose. The images flooded his mind. His team, his comrades, all of them dead. A battlefield, a human warship destroyed. The endless void of space, a place where no one could hear you scream, its own loneliness, its own isolation. Ethan stumbled backward, his heart racing, could hear his own breathing, ragged and desperate. He wanted to open his eyes, to escape this feeling, but something told him that doing so would mean he had failed. He could feel the darkness closing in, when for a moment he wondered if he would break under the pressure. The fear was suffocating, and he could barely think through the panic that was taking over his mind. But then something shifted. A small voice, soft and clear, broke through the darkness. "You are not alone." Ethan stopped. The words echoed in his mind, and slowly the fear began to fade. It wasn't gone entirely, but it was manageable. He realized that the fear he had been feeling wasn't real. It was his mind playing tricks on him, using his past experiences to create the illusion of a future that didn't exist. He opened his eyes and saw Lyra standing in front of him, watching him silently. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something almost like approval. "You passed," she said, her voice soft. "You faced your fear and saw it for what it truly was." Ethan breathed a sigh of relief, the weight of the trial lifting off his shoulders. But even as the fear faded, something else remained. A new feeling, something he hadn't expected. Gratitude. For the first time, he understood what Lyra had meant. Fear wasn't about facing physical danger. It was about confronting the darkness inside your own mind and understanding that it didn't have to control you. Lyra turned and started walking toward the edge of the clearing. "The next trial will be harder," she said, her tone serious. "But you have proven that you are capable. I will not make it easy for you." Ethan followed her, his heart still racing, but now with a new sense of determination. He knew the trials weren't just about survival. They were about understanding, about proving that he wasn't just a soldier. He was a human being, capable of growth, of change. And that was something Lyra hadn't seen before. As they walked in silence, Ethan couldn't help but feel that something had shifted between them. She hadn't said much, but he could see it in her eyes, a new respect. It wasn't just someone to be judged. He was someone who had shown that he could fight, not just with strength, but with heart. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step in winning her heart. The forest was quiet, the only sound the gentle rustling of the leaves as a breeze swept through the trees. Ethan walked beside Lyra, his body tired but his spirit strong, made it through the trials, each one more difficult than the last. But he knew that the hardest part was still to come. The trial of the heart. As they walked in silence, Ethan felt the weight of his actions, his words, and the decisions that lay ahead. The curse was still on him. His time was running out, and there were only a few hours left. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the path. He couldn't afford to waste any more time. "Lyra," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "What happens now?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She seemed lost in thought, her eyes focused on the path ahead. The air between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words and emotions that neither of them had addressed. Finally, she spoke. "You've proven yourself. In every way, you've shown that you're not like the humans I've known. But that's not enough. You've won the battles, but you have to win my heart." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He'd expected this. He'd known that the final trial wasn't going to be about defeating a monster or surviving a test of strength. It was about her. It was about the trust he had built, the bond they had formed in the short time they had spent together. "But how?" Ethan asked, his voice quiet. "How do I win your heart?" Lyra stopped walking and turned to face him. In her eyes now, a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. She was no longer the cold, distant sorceress who had cursed him. She was someone else. Someone who had been hurt, who had suffered, and who had learned to protect herself in a world that had given her nothing but pain. "You already have," she said softly. "You've shown me more than I ever thought possible. You've shown me that humans are capable of kindness, of understanding, and that is enough." Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him, but it was quickly replaced by uncertainty. Then the curse. "It's lifted." Lyra's expression faltered. For a moment, she looked down at the ground, her fingers tightening around the staff she carried. "The curse," she began, her voice low, "was never just about punishment. It was about fear. Fear of what humans have done, of what you might do in the future." She looked up at him then, her gaze intense. "But it was also about me. Was scared of letting someone in, of allowing myself to trust again. And you've shown me that I don't have to be afraid." Ethan took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "Lyra, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, and I don't know what the future holds. But I'm not going to run from you. I'm not going to turn my back on you. I can't promise that everything will be easy, but I can promise that I'll be here. I'll stand by you." Lyra didn't say anything at first. She simply stood there, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for something. Ethan felt exposed, vulnerable, but he didn't look away. He had already given her everything, his heart, his trust, his promise, and slowly, Lyra smiled. The smile was small, but it was real. Ethan couldn't help but smile back, his chest swelling with hope. It was then that he realized this was it. This was the moment that would change everything. "You've earned my trust, Ethan," Lyra said softly. "And in doing so, you've lifted the curse. It's over." Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders, and the pain in his chest, which had been there since the curse was cast, faded. For the first time in what felt like forever, he took a deep breath without feeling the sharpness of the curse. It was gone. But something else remained, a feeling of warmth, a bond that had been forged through the trials, through the challenges they had faced together. Lyra stepped forward, closing the distance between them. She reached out and touched his arm, her fingers warm against his skin. "I never thought I'd let anyone in," she whispered. "But you've changed my mind. You've shown me that maybe I don't have to be alone." Raced. And for a moment, he was lost in her gaze. He had won. Not just the trials, but her heart. And in doing so, he had proven that he wasn't just a soldier or a human. He was someone who could connect with others, someone capable of change. "I'm glad," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "Because I don't want to be alone either." They stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other. The world around them seemed to fade into the background. In that moment, it was just the two of them, a human and an alien, bound together by something stronger than a curse. Lyra's smile widened. She stepped closer still, until they were standing face to face. Slowly, she reached up, brushing, her fingers against his cheek. Ethan's breath caught in his throat, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, he thought she might kiss him. But instead, she placed her forehead gently against his, her breath warm against his skin. "You've proven more than I ever expected, Ethan," she said softly, "and for that I am grateful." Ethan closed his eyes, his heart racing, and held her close, his arms wrapping around her. He had won the hardest challenge of all. Not by fighting or by defeating monsters, but by opening his heart and trusting her. And now he had something more precious than life itself. He had her.